Welcome to our new family law podcast. This is going to be a podcast where we delve into some of the complexities of family law. Discussing today is going to be myself, Lucy Compton. I'm a senior paralegal in the family team here at Wright Hassall, and I'm joined by my colleague Peter Lowe, who's a senior partner in the family team. Peter has been qualified as a solicitor for over 30 years now, so between us we've got quite a bit of experience in this field of law. So we're going to kick off this series by discussing some of the myths around family law. So the first myth that we've got, which I think is one we get asked quite a lot at this time of year specifically, is most relationships break down at this time of year, being Christmas, than at any other time of the year. I'll hand it over to you, Peter, to tell us some more about that.
Well, thanks for the introduction, Lucy, and for reminding me of my 30 long years of experience. And you're quite right. I think it's one of those things that we hear about quite often, that more relationships seem to break down around the Christmas, New Year time than at any other time of the year. And like a lot of these myths, it's not entirely without a grain of truth. The first reason behind that is that this time of the year is quite a complex one for families. As you know, it's very messy, it can be quite pressured, and what that tends to do is highlight where couples are not necessarily on the same page. It brings to the fore, I think, times where you feel that you're not in it for the long term, and it becomes really apparent as a consequence of that. So that sort of begins to feed in to how you feel about your relationship, and you're together usually for much longer than you would normally be at any other times of the year. I think the second truism that goes with it is very much that there is an element of turning the page, that there's a new chapter that's opening up, particularly at New Year, and particularly with New Year's resolutions. What we tend to find, and what I've found over these years, is that people very often stand at a crossroads for a long period of time. It takes a particular point at which they decide to make that first step. You must have seen it very often in the practice that we had. Very often people have been thinking about it for many years. I mean, you've sat in on a number of cases where that's been the case.
Absolutely.
And it's something as simple as perhaps a New Year's Eve or a discussion that takes place over that time, that people take that first step along the road. And that first step is so important, because once you've made it, very few people then turn around and go back. So I think it is a myth, and the reason it's a myth is Christmas itself and New Year doesn't cause breakdown in relationships. But what this time of the year does is tends to confirm for people what they already knew. It brings to the fore what was truly in their heart, and it gives them the courage very often, sometimes fueled by an extra drink or two,
yes.
Sometimes fueled by an overdose of chocolate, but it is courage to decide to make a change, to make a New Year's resolution, and that's why we tend to see more inquiries and appointments in the January period, rather than it being about the season itself. Does that kind of...
Yeah, absolutely. I think as well, an interesting point that I've just thought of, I think, is the financial pressure that comes with this time of year as well. I think allows and means that a lot of couples will take stock about how they're feeling about things, and I think that doesn't help the situation that they find themselves in at this time of year particularly. Yeah. And I think it just goes back to what you say, that these things are a myth, and I think these issues crop up the whole time, for a long time, like you say. And I think it just takes the new year approaching for them to build up the courage to leave a situation that they're not particularly happy in anymore, or that's not quite working out.
You're right. I mean, the messiness of the situation at home, it comes to the fore at Christmas time. But it is a time for families, and it is a time where that extended family gets involved as well, and that can often lead to discussions around the table that are very different from the ones that take place over the rest of the year. So it's an interesting time of the year, and it's a time of reflection, and it's a time of change, which is where the impetus comes from. I
think it's really important as well for those people who do decide to separate over the course of Christmas and the New Year, that they have all the information that they need together to be able to make those informed decisions going forwards. And I think you're going to say a bit about the information that's helpful to them. So I won't step on your toes in that sense. But I think knowing everything, having to their hands what they need to know in terms of what their financial landscape looks like at the moment and what's going on, and really understanding why the marriage isn't working out, I think is really important, and arms them with everything they need to be able to move forwards.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. We live in a world where there's so much information available to people. If you look on the internet, if you look in books, if you look in blogs, if you look in podcasts even, there's loads of information that people are putting out there. And as ever, and knowing how to use it, those are the absolute keys. And it comes with a bigger picture attached to it. So, you need to know the bedrock of information about how property is shared, how income is distributed, how you deal with long-term investments such as pensions, and whether they're available and should be split or not. You need to understand the difference as well between being married and not being married.
Absolutely.
I mean that's another myth in itself, isn't it?
It definitely
is. The myth of common law wife, which doesn't exist, and a lot of people who are in relationships where they're not married have very different outcomes from those who are.
Absolutely.
So the reality, I think, for people is on this bigger picture, they need to understand what the basics mean. Because the reality, I think, is very much you only get one chance to get it right. You live with the consequences for an awful long time. And therefore, these decisions take time. They take time to gather the right information, to understand what you're looking to achieve as a consequence of that, and to make sure that it works over a long period of time for you. The right kind of settlement is not the one that happens in 12 months. It's the one that looks at 12 months, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, and has a proper structure and design to it. I don't ignore either, in the kind of the emotional impact of an immediate separation. There's loads of practical steps to take as well. There will be issues about, you've seen it before, how to deal with joint accounts, how to deal with the practicalities of how you actually live, who's going to live where, arrangements for the children. Children are not the only issue in families. The focus, quite rightly, is on them. But there's often extended family. People often forget the impact of a separation on grandparents and their relationship with children, or aunts and uncles, or other special people in their life. And I do try and encourage people to step back and look at the wider impact on the family situation as much as they possibly can. You're dealing with a loss. You're dealing with the emotional impact on you and the wider family, and that takes time to adjust to. People move at different rates and at different speeds and at different reactions to that. And I think you've got to consider not only the legal and long-term financial consequences, but dealing with those more immediate, practical, emotional and social needs that come out of a relationship having broken down.
I think we find as well a lot of people will want to arm themselves with all the information they need in terms of how separating works practically, like you said, before they rush into making those decisions. We'll often see people in January and they might not come back to us until June, once they've really thought things through and really taken time to understand all those things that you've just said and think about what the future looks like for them and to deal with the fact that their marriage is coming to an end. I think there's not always a benefit of people going at 100 miles an hour trying to rush things and trying to get them done. I think it really is important to take the time and seek the appropriate advice and move forward in a constructive and sensible way.
Yeah, the no-fault system deliberately built in a period of reflection. That reflection is 26 weeks in order to consider the amount of whether this is the right thing for you. It's perfectly understandable because people take time to adjust to new circumstances. Some people do, but you don't rush into getting married immediately. It's usually a long period of planning, and thought. It's usually a long period of courtship. There's all kinds of things that you're thinking about when you're entering into that. And what a divorce or separation usually is, not always, but usually is a different kind of relationship. You still have a relationship, whether it's through children, through family, or just through bumping into people in your day-to-day life. So it makes sense to think that through as to how that relationship is going to be, and not to destroy it for a short-term gain. I think, for us, for me as a family lawyer, and for the team, we've got a terrific team here. That's the objective. It's to look at a proper planned, structured outcome, and to make sure that we have a rounded way of advising people rather than just focused on some very narrow issues. You just need to look at our references and testimonials that come out of the legal directories, which show hopefully that is our approach. And I know that members of the team are affiliated and work very hard with Resolution, who promote a kind of conciliatory approach to the work as much as possible, while still making sure it's done thoroughly and done properly. So we are always open to discussion about information and interpretation of that information in an unpressured environment, so that people can have the opportunity to sit back and make that choice as to what they want to do next.
Absolutely. I hope that our very first and brief podcast has been helpful to somebody. And if there's anything that anyone wants to talk about, we're always here. You can contact us by telephone, and our number is 01926 886688, and you can ask to speak to a member of the family team, or you can go on our website and send us an inquiry and we'll get in touch with you.
And thank you very much, Lisa. And despite all we've said in the podcast today, we do both wish you a very happy Christmas. And we hope you really have a nice time with your families. We appreciate it's not all doom and gloom, but it is a reflective time of the year, and hopefully our advice takes that into account. Thank you.